My name is Brandon Chen. I'm part of the Fivetran product marketing team, and I'm excited to go over what purpose Fivetran serves today. For today's agenda, we'll be going over the shifting analytics landscape, how the impact of automation can apply towards your analytics organization, and of course, why a good amount of you are probably here is to learn more about Fivetran and see what the UI looks like. We worked with Dimensional Research to poll thousands of data analysts for our Data Analyst Appreciation Day, and here are some of the results that we found. Over 52% of companies are using 11 or more data sources strictly for analytics, where many of these pipelines that were created were built using antiquated ETL-style approaches. Over 92% of analysts that were polled mentioned that they still perform data integration tasks today, and 90% of the analysts that were reporting mentioned that there were at least several data sources that were unreliable, meaning that they were spending time cleaning and trying to figure out whether or not data was trustworthy before even making it to the point where insights were driven. All of this led to 68% of respondents saying that they were lacking the time they needed to implement profit-driving ideas, whether that's driving more ROI or figuring out how to be more efficient with spend. All of this in part due to the data integration problem. It's tricky to solve data integration, and with a growing number of sources growing month by month with the proliferation of SaaS companies and more actual data available to be tracked, it becomes more and more important to figure out data integration. The analytics landscape has shifted, but pipelines haven't quite caught up. When we look at the past single node databases, when you think of a database hosted on a server in some room somewhere, ETL had to be performed outside the database due to constrained compute and constrained storage in the database. If we move forward a little bit, we start to see Hadoop file systems become increasingly popular for their promise to have some sort of separation of compute and storage and be able to orchestrate complex pipelines to bring in these increasingly larger and larger data sets. If we fast forward to today, there are modern cloud databases where we think of Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery that have true separation of compute and store, can automatically scale to meet your needs, and make it so that it becomes increasingly feasible for data pipelines to become as agile as your database that is hosting all of your new data. And the business outcomes of automation are potentially saved resources, being able to deliver insights without having to manage a server, without having to control the cost there, without having to figure out how to do these complex transformations before it hits the warehouse, being able to quickly and agilely discover more insights. And it's just time savings off the bat. With a lot of these cloud systems, it's a lot easier to not have to spend personnel time managing these different systems, which means that they can spend a lot more time doing modeling, for example, or just simply driving business insights. And when you look at how to automate a pipeline and how you should think about your data pipeline, the critical piece of the infrastructure required to continuously bring reliable data in to report off of, these are a few points that you should consider. The data should easily be able to be centralized in one place, and that place should be your analytics database of choosing, where the data shouldn't have to be brought in an undecipherable JSON format and should easily work with the data types that are available in your database. Your pipeline should be reliable, being able to restart from a single point of failure with no costs or minimal costs, so that data integrity is preserved in case of a source outage, whether that's an API being out or a connection to the database temporarily broken. And your pipeline should also be cloud hosted and fully managed, where the benefits of being a SaaS solution means that you truly don't have to worry about infrastructure costs, and you don't have to figure out how to manage the pipeline results, including the destination schema. And Fivetran delivers on that sort of automated pipeline in these facets. Fivetran is truly automated, meaning after you set up the pipeline, Fivetran will automatically go figure out what data has been updated. And we actually have these pre-built connectors built for over 150 different data sources today. The architecture of Fivetran makes it so that we are continuously recording saved successful sync states and only restarting from those points if necessary in order to maintain data integrity. And as what you would expect from an automated managed data pipeline, our data engineers are always monitoring and updating our code to reflect the latest API changes. And the pipeline takes care of itself when it comes to things like automatic schema migration. Of course, because this is critical production data routing through your data pipeline, you want to make sure that there is a certain level of security associated with any tool that you onboard. So with Fivetran, we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified. We get this every single year. We're GDPR compliant, US Privacy Shield compliant, CCPA compliant, and able to sign BAAs to help you continue to meet your HIPAA compliance. Fivetran's encrypted end-to-end, whether the data is in transit or at rest, and we never retain any data. So immediately after the data is written into your warehouse, we immediately purge that from our system. We have over 1,000 happy customers today, over 2 trillion rows synced per month, with that number steadily increasing, where we expect to meet 3 trillion soon. And here's a quick snippet of a few of the customers that we do have today. Let's go into a little bit of what it looks like to use Fivetran. With Fivetran, I did mention before that you would authenticate into the source, and that's really the only step that you need. So for all of our sources, we have very clear public documentation. Many of them do include pictures of the various sources that you'll be connecting to, or queries to run in your source database, all to set up authentication. From there, Fivetran will automatically handle the scheduling and batching of queries or API calls depending on the source they were pulling from, interpret the data coming back, whether that's in JSON or a direct query format from the source database, normalize that data, including making sure that it is cast into the appropriate data types for your destination. And then we continuously manage the appropriate schemas and tables for updated data throughout the course of the connector's lifetime. So what that looks like in the destination is when the source has an updated row, the destination would update that row as well. The same goes for inserted net new rows. And for deletes, Fivetran actually does soft deletes, meaning if a row is detected to be deleted in the data source, Fivetran will mark a Boolean column that we create as true or false. Before I had mentioned the ability of a pipeline to be resilient when it came to things like schema changes. As we all know, that's one of the common points of failure is when the schema changes, whether that's an API change or a net new table's been added or net new column's been added. With the old approach, that would have broken many of those ETL scripts that were looking for very specific data. When you're running your data integrations through Fivetran, we actually accommodate all of those schema migrations. So whether it is a new column added, a new custom field added in the source, or a new column or table added in the database, Fivetran will automatically bring that sort of change into the destination without you needing to do any sort of manual intervention in the UI. Without further ado, let's hop into the actual UI itself so we can see what it looks like. In today's demo, we'll go over what it looks like to set up a connector and go over connector configuration settings as well. Whenever we use the word connector, what we're referring to is an integration setup for any of the data sources that we support. This is a quick overview of what my account looks like today, where you can see on the left-hand side, there are connectors, transformations, manual file uploads, destination settings, an external log export mechanism, user provisioning, and of course, alerts and notifications. You would add a connector by going to the top right corner. For today, let's do something like Salesforce. The first step is always naming the destination schema. This will be the destination schema name that we actually create in your designated warehouse or data lake. From here, this was the authentication step that I mentioned. Clicking Authorize routes us back into Salesforce to see if using OAuth to see if we can fetch a token from Salesforce that will enable us to connect to the API. After the completion of the setup tests that are unique for every single data source, we can go into the schema to review what objects we want to select from Salesforce. You can see here that we have all of the tables and columns that are actually in our Salesforce instance, and you can select or deselect columns by using their checkboxes. You can even hash columns if you have data that you want to bring in that may be more sensitive, such as PII, for example. And of course, we can search for specific tables that we do want to bring in. And for example, if I'm interested purely in accounts, you would just select that. and save and continue. From there, you can simply start your initial sync with this button, but I did want to go into some common different setup configurations that are available. The thing that you'll most likely be interacting with most is sync frequency. From here, we have a slider that can help you toggle your sync frequency to check for updates in the source from every 5 minutes to every 24 hours. And if you do ever want to resync your historical data, you can do so with this option. And if you do want to do something like resync a particular table, you can hover over the table that you're interested in, and you'll be able to resync the table there. After doing that, you can monitor your sync through the status tab of this Fivetran connector, and just add more connectors the way that we added this first one. If you have further questions on your particular use case, I do encourage you to talk to our sales team through sales@fivetran.com, and or feel free to reach out to us with the questions in this demo.